Who do you turn to for advice? Sometimes your best friends, brothers, cousins, aunt just isn't good enough. What then? See what Sarah says. In the same tradition of Dear Abby, Sarah is a gently blunt, practical, and wise advisor who brings with her a wealth of personal and professional knowledge coupled with gentle humor. Sarah offers inspiration and advice to help you live more fully and powerfully in your own life. Tune in every week to connect with the information and ideas you need to hear.
Hello, and welcome to the Sarah Says Show. I am so happy that you're here. We're filming at the studios at TCN, which is home of the Country Network. You can check them out at tcncountry.net, and I would encourage you to go to the App Store and download their app, because at some point in the future, we're going to be there, and I want you to be ready. So, to prepare for this show today, I think it's important that you know where I'm coming from. And for the past 20 years, I've really worked on building the life that I've imagined. And I vividly remember that moment back in 1998 when, after hours of crying, I was emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually devastated. I was exhausted. I literally felt crushed. And I was laying on the floor in my apartment, and I was asking the question, is this it? Is there nothing more? Is this the sum total of my life? And as I laid there, I heard a voice of a friend who had said something, actually said a couple of things to me, and they rang through my memory. And I'll never forget when I heard that voice say, take control of your destiny or everyone else will. And the second thing was, it's never too late to become the person you might have been. Now, at that moment, I knew I had to choose. And so I chose life. I chose hope. I chose health. I chose healing. And so now, 20 years later, I have learned quite a bit. After 3 marriages, I admit I'm a bit of a slow learner, but my third marriage has lasted 20 years and we're exceptionally happy. I've also learned how to parent my children. I've managed to lose 120 pounds and build health. I've built, bought, and sold several businesses. And through all of that, I've learned quite a bit. But there's one lesson that I think underpins everything that I want to share with you. And that lesson is that we need to learn to retake our personal power. Each one of us gives up so much personal power every single day. And we give it up, I believe, because we don't believe that we have the magic. We don't believe that we're enough. We're told what to do, what to buy, that you'll be happy when. And the reality of it is you are enough. And you have everything you need within you to live the life that you imagined. And so this show is designed to help you learn how to retake your personal power. So if you have any problems that you want me to help you solve, if you have any questions about any of the topics that we talk about, I want you to reach out and connect with me on social media. And you can find me on Facebook, on Instagram, and on Twitter under Sarah Z Says. That's SARAH. Z is in zebra, SAYS. And I'm ready, willing, and able to try and do everything in my power to help you retake your personal power. So I want you to indulge me. I have notes that will help me keep on time and on track. And so you may see me refer to them or hear them rustle. And it's just to make sure you get everything you need out of the show. And today's show, I could not possibly be more excited about the topic. It's one of the things I feel most passionately about, and it's about emotional intelligence. And we're going to be talking about, why are we so angry? What is emotional intelligence? The so what, who cares thing. Why does it matter? And how can you learn to build up your emotional IQ so that you can begin to retake your personal power? So I want to start by asking you to think about just the world right now. We live in what I believe is an angry climate. You can't have a conversation with someone about many topics, but particularly in this political climate, it's difficult to have a conversation with someone who believes differently than you do. We can't talk about things that we disagree about without immediately going from zero to angry. And carry that forward. We have road rage, domestic violence, violence in the workplace, violence in the schools. Where does all that come from? And then add to that the fact that we don't think we're enough. We're depressed. We feel empty, lost, alone. I'm feeling this and I don't know why. It must be your fault or my husband's fault or my best friend's brother's cousin's neighbor's fault. But really, where is that coming from? And so I believe that the root of a lot of this is our inability to understand, manage, and appropriately respond to how we feel. And there are studies, not like Joe Bob's brother's best friend's study, but we're talking about Harvard and Cornell. And these studies show that people who are best able to name, understand, and respond appropriately to their emotions tend to be 60% more effective in managing the circumstances in which they find themselves. Couple that with the fact that, I'm not going to get any smarter. My IQ is pretty much set. But your emotional IQ, emo IQ, is something that you can build and grow and develop throughout the course of your lifetime. So later in the show, I've got two amazing guests, people that I'm particularly excited about who are gurus in their own right to talk about emotional intelligence in the workplace and emotional intelligence with our children. So I want you to get ready. I want you to feel able to have this conversation, but we're going to talk about being aware of our emotions, being able to name our emotions, being able to play well with people we don't like, being able to make better decisions when we're all stuck in our feels, and also our ability to manage stress. So, how is emotional intelligence impacting you in your life? When we get back from this commercial break, you're going to get to meet my first guest, Dr. Stevie Dawn, and we're going to have that conversation. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Coming up, Sarah will be chatting with Dr. Stevie Dawn Blakely, CEO of OrangeCompass, LLC. You'll hear Dr. Stevie's takes on emotional intelligence in the workplace and how raising your emo IQ can minimize workplace drama. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Sarah Z Says. Now stay tuned for inspiration, information, and advice on how to retake your personal power.
The Country Network. It's your country. TCN is your place for country music. Go to tcncountry.com and click the pick to select the new TCN app on 7 of the most popular streaming platforms. From the rising stars to the superstars, TCN brings you exclusive live performances and original content. And now with the TCN app, you can take it with you wherever you go. The Country Network. It's your country.
Hello, and welcome back to the show. I am ridiculously, deliriously excited to welcome to my first show. My first guest is Dr. Stevie Dawn, and she is someone who I consider to be a guru of emotional intelligence. And she has a company called OrangeCompass, LLC. And I have to read this. Her training company is, of course, dedicated to providing corporate training and information and resources about emotional intelligence. She has tons of experience, which she's going to tell you about, but she really enjoys challenging people to change their workplace behaviors. And
not everybody enjoys that I do that, but
no.
Yes.
Not everybody is as thrilled about that as you are, I'm sure.
Right.
And so in this segment, one of the things that we're going to be talking about is emotional intelligence with adults in the workplace. So, I've mentioned a little about emotional intelligence in that first segment, but I really would love for you to spend a moment talking about what is emotional intelligence.
Absolutely. Well, I think it's important for everybody to realize that there's a lot of different definitions, and they're all great. The definition that I prefer to use and the way I prefer to look at it is really about how we interact with each other.
Agreed.
I think that's where emotional intelligence really shines as a concept. And so I think about it as a way to manage our emotions effectively, and then how to interpret the messages we hear correctly so that we're actually listening to the other person and not just hearing our own narrative.
You mean you don't want me to take everything personally?
Well, I'm just saying if we're going to get along, if we're not going to be so angry, maybe we should give each other that space.
What a novel concept. So,
indeed.
Within that framework, one of the things that I really want to spend some time talking about, the first one is workplace drama. Yeah. And also, just to give you a little kind of a heads up, I want to talk about the mean girl thing. Yeah. And so the first part of this is in the workplace, drama isn't exclusively about women. No. There is a lot of he said, she said, and I think men are as big of gossips as women are, just in different ways. But I would really love for you to address the issue of workplace drama and where emotional intelligence comes in. Because I don't think we wake up in the morning going, gee, I hope today is a stressful, dramatic-filled day. I'm hoping I get into these arguments with people, but we're knee-jerking.
Yeah.
So what percentage of the workplace drama would you even attribute to a lack of emotional intelligence?
Well, a lot of it is we have to remember that life happens before we ever get to work, right? I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't wake up and just roll into work 5 minutes later feeling as I did when I woke up.
Right.
There's a lot of life. There's getting ready. There's kids. There's dogs. There's husbands. There's traffic. There's all of these things that happen in between waking up and getting to work. And so 60% of workplace drama is caused by personal emotions. It's caused by the things that happen before you ever show up.
I've heard a phrase that's called the emotional chain of events. So would you agree with that?
Absolutely. So emotions are hormones, right? When we feel an emotion, we have hormones that spike in our body. And for every minute you're in an emotional conversation or an emotional moment, you need an equal minute for those hormones to play out. So if I have an argument with my child in the carpool lane for 5 minutes, it's going to be another 5 minutes after we're done before I start to feel normal again. So if you add all that up, that emotional chain of events, then by the time you get to work, people are already upset. People are already angry. And it's hard for them to shift that switch into an off position. We're emotional beings. We bring it with us. And so one of the things we have to do is learn how to, at the workplace, say, this person is not the person who caused me to feel this way. And so I need to not take it out on them.
Yes, it is. It's your fault. And so I want to extrapolate this out to a type of a story. So I think we've all seen in the workplace where, I get to work, I got up late. Yeah. My kid sassed me. I had a flat tire.
All the things.
I ran over something on the way, like an animal or whatever.
Hope not, but okay.
I get to work. And you have redlined something and put it on my desk. Yep. So you're saying that it's not your fault that I'm having a bad day, right?
It's not.
And yet I get in there in the workplace and you're the bad guy.
I am.
Why do we do that?
And I think it's because in general, our emotions tend to be somewhat behind the actual action. Right? Haven't we all been in that place where you think of the thing you really wish you would have said, but it's like 2 hours later? Right? Our emotions take a while. And so I think what happens is we get there and we have all this emotion that has built up. And so it needs to be released. And so we release it at whoever happens to be the person standing by our desk.
Inappropriately? Are you
Inappropriately. Yeah. And I think that's one of those things. We have to learn how to vent, right? Vent our emotions in a way that isn't at the wrong person. And that's where those coping mechanisms and learning how to take deep breaths, meditate, whatever those things may be for you, get you to that point where you can let those emotions die out before you walk in the door. I always say to people, if you would you rather be 2 minutes later walking in the door because you spent 2 minutes in the parking lot woo-sawing yourself to greatness?
Right.
Or would you want to walk in the space right on time and yell at the first person you see?
So I've got to ask you this question, and this is something that we both do similar things with our clients, but this was something I read, and I want you to feed back on this. So I was reading some information that was talking about that amygdala hijack thing, and we're not going to spend a ton of time on it, but in that moment when I'm triggered, that my IQ can drop 30 points. You said breathe, and that's what made me think of it. So for all these years, you hear all these speakers say things like, breathe, breathe. And I thought that they were saying it to keep me from hurting somebody, just to give me something to do so that I do not reach out and slap you or throat punch you, right?
That's still a useful tool in that way.
But what the reality was is that it was talking about how our body, the fight, flight, freeze, or faint, our body doesn't think the brain needs oxygen. So by breathing, we're literally raising our IQ back up. Because haven't we all said something and we're like, who said that?
Yes.
And we said it. So is this true? Can you talk about that a little bit?
No, absolutely. So we have that response. And one of the things that happens when we get into a fight or flight moment is our brain focuses only on protecting ourselves, not protecting our reputation or protecting relationships or keeping us out of prison. Wow. It just works on protecting us. And so what breathing does is get more oxygen up there. It slows you down so that your IQ can start working again and start thinking through, oh, maybe I should put my hand over my mouth and not say that thing out loud. And so it helps us. And then the big thing that breathing does is literally what it is doing is slowing you down. Because too often when we're responding emotionally, we're responding too fast for the situation. Well, so the breathing slows you down and makes you smarter all at the same time.
Well, the thing that struck me was I don't have 30 IQ points to spare. If I could lose as much as 30 IQ points because
maybe we need to work on that.
maybe this breathing thing has something to do for it.
Absolutely.
So I know that that's a tool.
Yes.
And you have tons of tools. And I don't want to run out of time, but I also want to talk about you. I've listened to you before. We've known each other for a while. I always enjoy hearing you speak, and you use a phrase that I really would like to spend a minute on.
Okay.
It's called collecting emotional stamps.
Oh,
and
man.
So
one of my favorite topics.
I want you to elaborate on that.
Okay, so can I start with a story?
No.
I feel like
of course you can.
Look at that. That was not emotionally intelligent of you right there to just shut me down.
That's right.
So I think it comes to us in a story that makes a lot of sense. I don't know about any of you, but there are definitely times where I have emotional attachments to things, right? Perhaps a favorite parking spot at work, or if you're in the corporate world, right? When you go to that one meeting, you have an assigned seat in that meeting. It may not have your name on it, but you're expected to sit there.
At church, you always
that's a great
sit
one.
In that same
it's
spot.
That spot in that pew, and if somebody new sits there, oh man, watch out. Right? And what happens is we have these emotional attachments to things. And when somebody does sit in that spot, or somebody does park in your parking space, you collect what we call an emotional stamp.
Okay.
And it has the date, the time, the guilty party, what they were wearing, what they said, what they didn't say, all the bad things. Okay. And you file it away. And what happens is you say to yourself the most critical phrase that we should all outlaw in our brains, which is, it's not a big deal. Because here's the thing. If you say to yourself, it's not a big deal, your brain registered, it is a big deal because you need me to remember this for you. Right. And so now I'm going to collect that stamp. I'm going to put it back there. And once you collect enough stamps, you go postal. Yep. And you will unload all of these stamps on some poor human who's in front of you. Now, let's hope it's the right human, the person who actually made you do it. But you're not even, and here's what we all know when we get mad. You're not even just collecting stamps on one topic. Mm-hmm. You unload all of your stamps on all the awful things they've done over the last 6 years. And this poor person in front of you
had no idea it was
coming. Right? And so now when we talk about being angry, we're angry at them for something they didn't even know that they did wrong because we said, it's not a big deal. So I didn't say anything to them. And so I just collected that stamp and I held on to it. And that's going to be the issue.
Is it fair to say that we say that it's not a big deal because I'm ashamed, embarrassed,
It's
awkward.
because we think it's petty.
Because I know it's petty.
Yes.
And I don't want you to know that I'm petty.
Yep.
And so instead of saying, so let's use this as a teachable moment.
Right.
You parked in my spot. She didn't, by the way. But
well,
let's
I
say you
hope not.
did. Yeah. Wink, wink. It's not a big deal, Stevie.
Right.
So she parks in my spot. The better thing to say is, wow, I didn't realize I'm feeling this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, she parked in my spot. I'm real comfortable with that.
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't realize so emotionally attached to that
So
spot.
your parking spot, right?
But again, personal growth is painful.
Mm-hmm.
Personal growth is awkward. I have to now say there's something wrong with me. Not like major, but there's something that I need to correct.
Right.
And that feels uncomfortable. So it's way
does.
easier to say that it's your fault for parking in my spot.
Yes.
So,
But let me take that one step further, though.
please.
The number one person you collect emotional stamps on is yourself.
What? And that's why we have self-esteem issues.
Yes.
There we
Anytime
go.
you think you have it done, you just collected an emotional stamp while collecting an emotional stamp on me.
Wow.
You collected one on yourself because you thought, oh my gosh, am I really that petty? Oh, should I really bring that up? So now, right, you're balancing both.
And this,
Right?
my friends, is why we struggle with self-esteem.
It is.
Because
It
we're
is.
collecting emotional stamps on ourselves. At the same time, I'm blaming her for the fact that I feel angry because she parked in my spot that I always... How could she not know that I
How
parked
could
in
she
that
not
spot?
know? That's right.
That's just rude. So
That's right.
you talk about a tool that I want to spend a little time on, and I have to look at my notes because I want to get it right. It's talking about the clean slate approach, approaching circumstances. So an action item while we're working to build our emotional intelligence
Right.
is to deal with things with this clean slate approach. So
Right.
help me know, what does that mean? What does it look like? How would I apply that?
Yeah. So the clean slate approach is this idea that if I can capture my emotions and attach them to the moment in which they happened, then the next moment is living in the moment and they're no longer with me. Right? So I want to say, if I have an 8:30 phone call and it doesn't go well and I don't enjoy it and I'm feeling bad, when I see you at 9:30, instead of allowing that emotion to filter over to you, I'm going to say to myself, it's not her fault. That's my cleaning of the slate.
Okay.
It's not her fault. I'm going to put those emotions over here because they happened earlier. And then I'm going to give you the ability to have a 100% present individual that's starting from an emotional place of normal. And then we can go from there. And it truly is finding that trigger phrase for yourself. Some people just tell themselves clean slate. Some people tell themselves, I use it's not their fault. I like that one.
Right.
But it's taking just an extra 20 to 30 seconds in between interactions to make sure you're coming to the new interaction with a clean slate of emotions and you're not bringing on those emotions of something else forward in time.
You know, one thing I like that, and one thing I would ask if it dovetails into is I have been practicing, albeit maybe not so well, is that nothing's personal.
Yeah.
So I love this. And before we run out of time, how can people reach out to you?
Yeah, so people can reach out to me. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm on LinkedIn, and it's all under Dr. Stevie Dawn, STEVIEDAWN.
Well, I have to tell you, I can't thank you enough for being here today. You have been
Thank you
awesome.
for having me.
And on the other side of this commercial break, we're going to have some resources that you can access. So don't go anywhere.
Later in the show, Sarah will be visiting with Emily Oakes, an LPC intern with the Center for Counseling and Family Relationships. Sarah and Emily will be talking about the importance of helping our children understand their emotions and teaching them to strengthen their emo IQ. Do you have a problem or challenge you'd like Sarah to talk about? Connect with her on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter at Sarah Z Says. Don't go anywhere. Sarah will be right back with information and resources to help you retake your personal power.
Well, hello and welcome back. You know, after watching the Sarah Says show for a while, you're going to discover that I'm all about showing you how you can retake your personal power so that you can live more fully and completely in your own life. But my friends, there is absolutely no magic bullet, no magic book, no magic process, procedure. There's nothing, you're the magic. There's nothing outside of you. There are tools that will help you, but you're the magic. And I want you to choose to change your thinking, because by changing your thinking, you're going to change your choices. And then those choices that you make will in turn ultimately change your life. But having said that, I do believe that we all need resources and information and tools that can help us. And so I've got a few relative to the emotional intelligence piece that I think are really important and can be super helpful. So the first one is a book. Dr. Stevie Dawn recommended this book. It's called Emotional Intelligence 2.0, and it is written by Travis Bradberry. And the thing that I think is pretty cool about it is these chapters talk about how our brains are wired in terms of emotional intelligence. There's a chapter that talks about how research talks about how important emotional IQ is in your daily life and gives very specific examples of, for good or bad, how it plays out. A second book that I want to talk about is going to be, we'll see more about it with my next guest, but it was recommended by my next guest, and it's called My Mixed Emotions. It's by Eleanor Greenwood, and it's for children. And it talks about how feelings are complicated, and it's not always easy to figure out what a child is feeling, but it helps them learn to identify and express their emotions. It's a skill, and it's divided into happiness, fear, anger, and sadness, but it explores how to help children identify and isolate what they're feeling, how to move forward when they feel something, how to manage those emotions. I also found a super blog, and I'm going to butcher her name, but it's about emotional intelligence and mindfulness. It's by a woman named Maria Nitzvestyana. And my apologies if I've butchered the name, but it's online at www.executivecraft.com. That's executivecraft.com. Maria is a personal and executive coach, and she has a couple of master's degrees. One is in management and the other is in psychology. And she is passionate about helping adults understand more about emotional intelligence. And her blog is pretty good, and I definitely want to encourage you to check it out. Now, I have a go-to resource that I've used for years in my coaching and training, and it is called The Feeling Wheel by Dr. Gloria Wilcox. And here's the reason I like it so much, and you can see it up on the screen, and if Chris will just leave it up there for a moment, I want you to look at this tool. In the center, it talks about what you're feeling, the major emotions, and then it spreads out so let's say you're feeling angry, but are you really angry, or are you feeling jealous? So this tool is super important. Thank you, Chris. This tool is super important in helping you learn to name your emotions. And you can work it from the inside out, or you can start at the outside and work in. But when you're feeling something, the more you're able to label that emotion, the more powerful it is. And these resources you can find online. You can probably find them in your public library. But I think it's so critical that you access these. So when we get back, you're going to meet my second guest. See you then.
Do you have a question you'd like Sarah to answer? Connect with her on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter at Sarah Z Says. That's SarahZsays. Your question might be answered on the next episode of The Sarah Says Show. You can also recommend a book, artist, or vlogger for Sarah to check out and maybe even showcase on the show.
Hello and welcome back to the Sarah Says Show. My second guest on the show today about emotional intelligence is Emily Oakes, and I want to get this right, so I'm going to read it. It's a licensed professional counselor intern who is being supervised through her internship by Dr. Rhonda Johnson. And Emily is with the Center for Counseling and Family Relationships, and I am so excited to have you here today. Emily, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, it's a pleasure. If you would, I am particularly interested in your journey of where you came from and how you got into this counseling with children.
Well, thank you, and I really appreciate that question. So I started my career in education. I did first and third grade. I did ESL, or English as Second Language Learners, and then the bulk of my career was spent with gifted and talented children. Okay. Yeah, and children with struggling learners. So both of those groups of kiddos do have a unique emotional needs. And so really talk about passion.
Yeah.
And it's been a great segue from linking one career to the next. And so I'm so fortunate to be in this field, and where a lot of my focus is spent on kiddos and families and parenting and all of those things, which lead to emotional intelligence, right?
That's right. And it was very heartening when I called and talked to you about being on the show, talking about how your being a guest closed the circle, because in the first half of the show we talked about emotional intelligence in the workplace and how adults, we don't know this. Well,
Right.
and it, in our generation, my generation, it was stop crying. No, it didn't hurt. No, there's nothing to be afraid of. But what we're trying to, is we desperately, in some ways, try to evolve as a society, is to recognize that emotional intelligence is real, and in many cases the problems that we have as adults, and the anger that we're experiencing, the a lot of the disproportionate negative relationships that we have as we get older, come from we don't have that emotional intelligence. And so I know that I had my first guest describe it, but I think there's a wide range of descriptors, and I would love for
Absolutely.
you to share, what is your thought on what emotional intelligence is?
So if we think about it from a child's perspective, it's the ability to identify their emotions and the emotions of others, which you and I both know is a skill, right?
Right.
And so the big piece about this that I really love, and this is a great thing that I do with all of my parents, is guess where they learn that?
Exactly.
It's not something they're born knowing, and you're so right to connect it to you. In our childhoods, you're fine. That didn't hurt. You're okay. And so what do we learn to do? We learn to minimize them, to shut them down, to not validate them. And when we don't work with them, we don't know what to do with them.
Well, one of the things, and the reason that I think it's so important to have you on the show today, is I see a lot of the conversations coming about, we're coddling our children, we're, pandering to the children, or make me angry by calling people who have emotions snowflakes, right?
Right.
Oh, you're being too sensitive, or
Right.
whatever. Labels, when you label something, you limit it. So I just want to, if you're watching the show, stop labeling things, because we're labeling things in a negative way because they make us feel uncomfortable. And so it's uncomfortable for me to have a child who's feeling things and I don't know what to do with that.
Sure.
And that's why I think many parents are telling the children to, no, you don't feel that way. So I want you to talk about a little bit, we talked about how we learn our emotional intelligence from our parents, but
Right.
talk about what you're seeing in the center. You have children coming to you with emotional needs, and I thought it was really poignant that you mentioned, I think we tend to think of the children who struggle with emotional intelligence are the bad children, or
Sure.
the children who have
Sure.
problems. But you mentioned that the gifted and talented children are coming to you with emotional issues.
Absolutely.
So will you talk a little bit from a wider perspective of when children are learning not how to manage their emotions, what behaviors are you seeing?
Well, we're seeing a lot of things that you've talked about. We see, I've got kiddos coming to me who are anxious, kiddos who are coming to me who are angry. Parents, often as schools deal with it through behavior modification. If we can just modify their behavior, but there's a missing piece there. And so much education, which is one of the things that you've talked about, Sarah, is like so much education needs to be done. And so when we don't meet the kids from an emotional standpoint, or their understanding of what they're experiencing in their brains and their bodies, we leave out a big piece of the behavior that we need to change. Because if we need to change it, we need to really understand what's behind it. And the thing is you can't ask a kid, why did you do that? How many times does the kid will look at you and say, I don't know. And guess what? They don't. Their behaviors are often driven by needing to get something met. They have an unmet need. They don't know how to get it met, and the brain and the body respond.
Yeah, and I want to talk for just a quick moment. The whole point of having you on after Dr. Stevie, we end up in the workplace with people who can't manage and regulate their emotions. But we're coming from the children. So I want to talk about a generational thing that I've seen happen for quite some time is my grandma raised my mom. My mom raised me. Well, my grandma raised me, and she had to walk uphill both ways to school, right?
In the snow.
My mom in the snow with the dinosaurs chasing her, right?
Yes.
So then my mom had nothing near the I mean, I remember when electric typewriters came out and my mom had to learn how,
Yes, right.
and then, so our children are growing up with a smartphone in hand, and they're constantly connected, and they're addicted to technology, or we think we're helping them. And so think about how depressed people get because of the expectations on social media, and you have a 6-year-old who doesn't understand their emotions. So part of solving the emotional intelligence crisis or the conundrum is we have to attack it from both ends.
Sure.
So Dr. Stevie talked about the clean slate approach as a tool. She talked about stop collecting emotional stamps. You had mentioned a tool that I thought was really important, was the importance of self-regulation. And so this is one tool. We'll talk about another one later, but this tool was the self-regulation. So will you elaborate on that? How, first of all, parents watching this, how is a parent going to learn to help their child with the self-regulation?
Great question, great concept. So there is a theory behind self-regulation, and that it really isn't a thing because we're created for relationship. So an example that I like to use with this is, have you ever been in a room with a screaming, crying baby? Okay, have you ever been in a room with a screaming, crying baby and the caregiver is so stressed that they go to comfort this baby and it doesn't work?
Right.
And so mom gets more stressed and the baby gets more stressed. So notice what the parent, the mom, the caregiver has to do to calm that child. They have to begin by calming their own bodies because a baby, an infant, doesn't have the tools to do that themselves. So our children borrow our brains and our bodies to regulate their own. And so when we think about this in the way that a child develops, we have so many kiddos that live in highly stressful situations and homes. So you think about what that does to the brain. They have parents who can't regulate their own emotions. And then we get those kiddos into school, or we get those kiddos into different environments that really activate that part of their brain. They don't have the tools.
So we have a bunch of highly charged people raising highly emotionally charged children who go into an environment where they're told to sit down and be quiet and don't get upset. So self-regulation then involves teaching the children to self-soothe.
Absolutely.
How do we do that?
We model it.
So
it comes back to us as parents, as caregivers, teachers, anyone who's working with a child. And one of the things you talked about was the generation of, well, I had it way worse than you did. Like, you're fine. It doesn't hurt. Whatever it is. Notice what happens to the thought behind the discipline process in that. It's screaming, it's yelling, a very firm, stern hand, sometimes some physical discipline there. And it often doesn't work. Well, why is that? Can you teach a child to calm and regulate their brains and bodies when your brain and body isn't regulated?
Okay. So are we asking then the children, like I've read how some schools have integrated meditation, and so that's teaching the child to self-soothe.
Absolutely.
Are there some other, I'm a parent, I have a kid who's having a meltdown. I have never heard this concept before, but they're watching the show. So what do we tell them that my child's having a meltdown? How am I going to calm myself and then also help my child do that?
It's a great question. So calming yourself first is your first step to take, because knowing if I'm tense, if I'm stressed, my child feels that. They are so highly in tune to what we are doing that we don't have to say anything. They know that we're stressed. So my first step as a parent would be to calm myself. So check in with your body. What are you noticing? Are you noticing tension? Are you noticing a racing heart rate? Are you taking quick, short breaths? Dr. Stevie talked about, deep breathing and things like that. So regulating your own body and in that calm place. And then the next step would be to validate your child's emotions. It's really counterintuitive, right? Like your kid's having a meltdown in the middle of Target and like your face is bright red, you're embarrassing. What you don't know is most of those parents are like, high five, sister, been there with you, right? But you want to get out of there. And so in that moment, it's like maybe you don't even know what emotion your child is experiencing, but they're dysregulated. They can't control themselves. And so one of the simple phrases that we use, and my daughter likes to call this going all play therapist, going all play therapist on me, Mom, is, well, you're having some really big feelings right now.
Big feelings. There you go.
They're big. We don't
There's
know what
some adults I'd like to
big,
say that too.
Right?
They're having some big feelings.
They're really
right
big
now, right?
And so what you're beginning to do is connect your left brain to their right brain, their emotional brain. So when we're feeling understood, we feel like you get it,
Right.
we begin to calm.
And I think that an important thing for parents, because again, I think one of the struggles are we live in a different culture, society than our parents did. It's
sure do.
significantly different. And so it does feel like coddling, but acknowledging is not accepting or approving.
It's not.
And so by saying, I can see that you're having some big feelings right now, isn't saying it's okay that you're screaming like like you had your leg cut off or a wild banshee, but you're just saying you're helping that child by acknowledging. So the first thing is calm yourself down, because you being angry isn't going to help. The second thing is to acknowledge what the child is feeling, not accept it, not approve of it, but just say, so you're having some big feelings right now. Okay.
And and I don't age, all those things come into it, but what they're going to let you know, I love it when kids let me know I get it wrong, because guess what? I get it wrong. And so they let me know what it is they're feeling. They may not even know, but also as you're beginning to label their emotions, they're building their vocabulary and their ability to communicate with you.
And that's a huge tool.
It is a huge tool.
Huge tool. The one thing you had mentioned, we had shared some emails before the show, you had talked about the touch. Now, let's be honest, my kid's having a meltdown, our grandkid's having a meltdown, and, the way I want to touch them is not what you're suggesting, right?
Don't.
I'm wanting to just, put my hand over their mouth, or maybe there's a choking action or whatever.
Backhanding.
That's right. Wait till I get you out in the parking lot kind of thing. But basically what you're saying is to comfort them in a way that is, it's not okay the way you're acting, but I understand. So we're acknowledging that we're stressed, we calm down. The next thing is that we're having that moment where we help them understand that I see you.
Yes.
And then the touch. What does that do in the middle of all this?
That physical connection.
Yeah.
So the co-regulation. And notice, like, you're a tender, a caring, a hug. We need that type of stimulation as well. And so when it comes to us from a calm, regulated caregiver, again, it leads to the connection. When we feel connected, we can calm our bodies. We begin to co-regulate with the person that we're with.
And that helps them, again, maybe the deep breaths, and we're doing that. Now, you had talked about something called, and it's because you're getting your certification in play therapy.
Yes.
So I want to just take literally maybe a minute to talk about the role of play therapy in helping children understand their emotions.
Sure, absolutely. So the thing with play therapy is if we know how the brain develops, right, it's bottom to top, right to left. So the appropriate way that a child communicates is through play. In fact, if your child isn't playing, I'm a little concerned. Like, that's where the brain development starts for them. And so if you compare it to talk therapy as an adult, right, an adult can communicate that way. A child communicates naturally through play. And so while they're engaging in play, there's lots of different modalities on it. One of the primary play therapies that we use at our center is child-centered play therapy. And so it's a non-directive modality, but the child comes in, and the first thing I'm doing is I'm connecting with them. I'm tracking them. Oh, you knew what you wanted to do right away. Or, and so they have that connection, that attunement. They know that I'm with them in that moment.
Nice.
And then as they go through their play, I'll begin to label their emotions.
And this is the tool you were talking about, the name it to tame it.
It's a little different through play therapy, but yes, absolutely, very, very similar.
Okay. Now, if people needed to reach out to you, because I know we had talked, you had some great free resources on your site, how can they reach out to you?
Yes, our website is really simple. It's just ccfam.com. And then my email address is equally as simple. It's just emily@ccfam.com.
ccfam.com.
Yes, and we're on Facebook as well, just Center for Counseling and Family Relationships.
Well, I can't thank you enough for being here today. And when we come back from this break, I'm going to share some sugar-free positivity stories. I'm going to tell you about one of my Change the World passion projects. And I'm going to let you know how you can win one of my handmade quilts. And I'm going to give you a sneak peek for the guests on the next show. So don't go anywhere.
How will you retake your personal power this week? Connect with Sarah on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter at Sarah Z Says and let her know. Use the hashtag SarahZSays. That's SarahZSays. Let Sarah's experience, knowledge, and sensible advice help you live your life fiercely and to the fullest.
The Country Network. It's your country. TCN is your place for country music. Go to tcncountry.com and click the pick to select the new TCN app on 7 of the most popular streaming platforms. From the rising stars to the superstars, TCN brings you exclusive live performances and original content. And now with the TCN app, you can take it with you wherever you go. The Country Network. It's your country.
Well, hello and welcome back to the last segment of the Sarah Says Show. One of the things I'm going to do as often as possible is share with you stories about what I call sugar-free positivity. And I think it's important that we see that there's good and wonderful and bright and loving things going on in the world. And so in light of the conversation today about emotional intelligence, I want to share with you a story about the Team Holt is what it's called. So Rick Holt and his wife had a child who was diagnosed with cerebral palsy at birth, and they were told to put this child in an institution, that this child would never really be able to communicate or survive very well. And his parents noticed that this child, his eyes followed them around, and so they just were persistent and loving and caring. And one of the hallmarks of emotional intelligence is reaching out from yourself and being positive and resilient and being flexible. And so one day they found ways to begin to communicate with the child, who said that he wanted his dad to enter a race and take him on a race. And his dad did. And so it was pretty interesting that in 1977 they began doing it, and the son said, "Dad, when we're doing this, I don't feel like I'm handicapped anymore," and that gave his dad the impetus to continue. And I have to tell you that ultimately this dad, who never ran a day in his life, was able to improve his fitness to the point where, even though he was pushing his child, that he was able to obtain a personal record of a 5K run in 17 minutes. Now, I would be lucky to ride a bike 5K in 17 minutes. So that tells you this was an amazing effort on behalf of the whole family. And as of 4 years ago, in March of 2016, these two gentlemen had competed in more than 1,000 endurance events, including 72 marathons and 6 Ironman triathlons. And you can find out more by Googling Team Hoyt, H-O-Y-T. The point of the story is that our ability to exercise our emotional intelligence gives us the potential to see the good in difficult situations, to be flexible and to begin to be resilient, even when things don't seem to be going our way. Speaking of that, I want to share with you, I have several projects that I call my Change the World passion projects. And I want you to think about how many of you have a bag of these kind of used grocery sacks in your home. Now, I think we all do. And we don't know what to do with them. We just keep saving them until we run out of room, and then we run them up to the Walmart or the Kroger, and we dump them in there, and we feel like we've done something good. But when we keep them, what do? We put trash in them and throw them away anyway. Well, what if I could tell you that this could ultimately be converted into a mat for the homeless? Well, there is a nonprofit with which I'm very proud to be associated. It's one I started myself, called Sarah's Bag Ladies. And what we do, we're basically in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, but happy to expand to other places that may be interested, is we take these bags and we convert them into balls of plastic yarn. And then these balls of plastic yarn are crocheted into mats for the homeless that we give out through the Salvation Army. If you're interested in finding out more about this organization, I have to tell you, last year, we processed more than 10,000 bags. We made about 25 mats. But every year, there are 5 trillion bags that are produced, and less than 1% of them are recycled. If we really want to change the world, we need to do more that impacts at the ground level. And you can get involved in this or similar organizations. Just Google Plarn, P-L-A-R-N, or you can find out more by going to Sarah's, S-A-R-A-H, bagladies.org. Now, to raise money for this, I got to show you something. So I have this magic quilt. It's called You're Mermazing. And we are raffling this. Ta-da! This quilt is being raffled. Let's see if I can. Ta-da! We are raffling this quilt off to raise money for Sarah's Bag Ladies. And so I would encourage you to visit us on Facebook or Twitter. Facebook or Twitter, Sarah's Bag Ladies. You can also find us on Instagram. And these quilts, we do one every month, and it's to raise money so that we can do more with Sarah's Bag Ladies to help convert these used grocery sacks into mats for the homeless. So I want to spend the next few minutes closing, and I absolutely want to thank you for being here. I also want to thank my guests today, Dr. Stevie Dawn and Emily Oakes. Stevie is with OrangeCompass, LLC. Emily Oakes is with the Center for Counseling and Family Relationships. And you can find their contact information on our Facebook page, or you can reach out to me through social media, and you can access their information that way. I know that we have spent a lot of time talking about emotional intelligence, and we've given you some tools and tips and plenty of resources. But there's one final thing that I want to tell you. And I think, mentally, today may feel like you've been drinking water out of a fire hose. Lots of information. But part of retaking your personal power is having those tools and that information. Watch the show again, take notes, do what you need to do to begin to retake your personal power. But I want you, if you remember nothing else that we've talked about today, to think about this. That whenever you get angry or scared or frustrated or anxious, your body's going to give you a trigger. Your body will tell you. For me, I can feel my heart pounding. For you, it may be that you notice an increase in your breathing. You may feel flushed or tingly. Whatever that is, I want you to start noticing that. And then I want you to say, oh, I've been triggered. And remember that the breathing helps you get those IQ points back that we talked about losing. But it's also that opportunity for you to begin to say, what's going on here? What is it that I'm feeling? Because once you begin to recognize your trigger, you will then be able to retake control of that aspect of your life where you say or do things that you come back later and go, who was that? Who said that? Why did I do that? Why did I make that decision? We surrender too much power every single day, and you have within you everything you need to live the life that you've imagined. And we've certainly talked a lot about that today. Now, are there other problems, questions, ideas that you have that you want to let us know about? If there's anything that you want us to help you with, let us know. You can connect, as we've told you quite a few times, and never too many, that you can connect with me on social media, on Facebook, on Instagram, or on Twitter at Sarah Z Says. That's SARAHZSAYS. And I want you to know that we're here for you. And so on the next show, I'm going to be visiting with some folks about Alzheimer's and the impact that it has on the family. And I'm going to have an attorney on here to talk about some of the practical implications and things that need to be done. I'm also going to be talking with someone from the Alzheimer's Association. I'm going to have a friend come on to talk about her personal experience with her mother, who's in the mid stages of Alzheimer's, as well as a counselor who specializes in working with caregivers for those with Alzheimer's. I want to remind you again that we've been filming today at the studios at TCN, which is home of the Country Network. So you check them out by going to tcncountry.net and download that app so you can get ready for when our shows are on the app. And I want to say that it's been a pleasure having you. I'm grateful for you and your support and your participation in the show today. And until we get together again, my friends, you have been zinked.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Sarah Says Show. Remember, you already are everything you need to live the life you've imagined. Retake your personal power today. If you have a problem you want Sarah to help you solve or questions you'd like answered, find Sarah on social media and let her know. You can message her on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at Sarah Z Says. That's SarahZsays. Bye for now.